community. I also serve as Senior Program Manager in the Office of Health Equity at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where I organize trainings across the enterprise around racism and health equity. In addition, I have the great opportunity of serving as a course instructor for medical students at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine in the sorry, it's called this. Our certificate program is with the Office of Health Equity on the Vanderbilt University Medical Center side. It gets a little confusing, so I get tongue tied. But the School of Medicine, we have a certificate in health equity, and I'm a course instructor for that. So.
Great, thank you. Carol.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tara Thomas. I am with Nissan Group of the Americas, located at the headquarters in Franklin, Tennessee, so not too far from here. I am a senior manager of U.S. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and very excited to be here today.
Thank you. Let's bring it over here to Bo.
Yeah, Bo Robertson, and I'm with Fourth Capital Bank. I'm a vice president in relationship banking. I've got over 30 years of experience in the financial services industry. I've earned every one of these gray hairs. Done a little bit of everything as far as business banking. I've done lending, but my passion is about bringing communities together and helping to people with their financial needs and helping them with their goals. I've been very involved in our diversity and inclusion programs throughout the years and spearheaded a lot of projects there and worked with a lot of businesses and on the business resource group side. So happy to be here today.
Great. Hey, everyone. My name is Brandon Salas. My pronouns are he, him. I am the talent acquisition manager at Gresham Smith, located in downtown Nashville. We're an architecture engineering services firm. We do interior design and planning as well. I've been in recruitment for a little over 10 years, third-party side as well as professional services and corporate recruitment. I'm involved with our LGBTQ employee resource network at the firm. So I had spearhead that, as well as I'm involved with the Nashville, Tennessee Chamber, or they've changed the name, Tennessee Pride Chamber, as well as the Table, which is a diversity and inclusion nonprofit in Nashville, really aiming to end racism and create equity within the city. So
Great. We also have a panelist joining us virtually. And for those of you who are here, if you'll bear with us, we have our tech people helping us to switch the microphones back and forth. So if we have a few moments in between where we get caught on that, please be patient with us. But I'd like to introduce Victoria.
All right, can you hear me? Perfect. So I'm Victoria Montefusco. I'm joining you today from my home in Knoxville, so a little bit ways away from Murfreesboro. But I am representing TVA here today. So TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, we're the nation's largest public power producer. We're actually celebrating our 90th anniversary this year, which is amazing. But my job at TVA, I'm a financial analyst currently, and then I'm also very involved in TVA's LGBTQ plus employee resource group. So I serve on the core planning team of that. Been really involved with a lot of the activities that we do there. It's been an amazing experience. I think I forgot to mention my pronouns. They're she, they. Very excited for today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate each of them joining us here. What we're going to do is we kind of roll along here. I've got a first question or two. We'll kind of give each panelist a chance to kind of warm up and share their views. As we get rolling into this, we may bounce back and forth a little bit with the questions where people can kind of pick and choose where to jump in. So we can, in terms of which parts, and being able to react to each other as well too along the way here. This first question, we've already kind of got a little bit of a rolling start in with the introductions, but I want to at least give them the opportunity to address it a little further if they'd like. You know, the title of this panel is Bringing Your Whole Self to Work. And I guess the opening question is from a couple points of view. You know, what does that mean to you? And what perspective do you bring to that topic? So let me just go a little bit out of sequence here. We'll start with Bo, because if we go in the same order every time, that gets a little, I got to keep them on their toes a little bit.
I appreciate that. So, you know, bringing your whole self to work for me is very relevant to my career. I'm a little bit older than many of the people in the room, and so I've seen a lot of changes over the decades. When I first got out of college, I pretty much had to live a closeted lifestyle. at least at work. I didn't feel like I was comfortable or allowed to be comfortable to really talk about my personal life. I had to use a lot of, that's my roommate kind of comments. I worked for a very small finance company that eventually grew to a large bank. And when I was there, I'll give you an example. For the first 3-4 years, never missed a day of work. I was always I wanted to be the best guy on the planet. I wanted to be the best banker. Wanted to make sure I always showed up. And I had a partner who passed away from HIV. And it was a very different time. It was very scary. I'd never missed a day of work, and I needed to take 2 weeks off to get my head right when my partner of 5.5 years passed. And that's how I had to come out, because I was threatened to lose my job for not coming into work after 4 years of never missing a single day, because there was no spousal or domestic partnership or even any real empathy around my situation. So that kind of changed my attitude a little bit. I was like, if I can't be respected enough when the most tragic thing that could possibly happened, then I need to own who I am and be more out. So, and forgive me if this goes a little long-winded, but fast forward a few years, I brought myself out to work, made sure that people knew what my situation was, who I was. I went to dinner with my district manager one night, and I was, again, Johnny hungry to do next big thing. And I said, hey, I won't say his name. Hey, sir, I'm ready. Let's get me promoted. I'm ready for the next big thing. What's my next job? And he said, Bo, I want to tell you something. You are my best salesperson. You're the best manager that I've got. Your people love you, and you're never getting promoted. And I said, okay, well, hit me. Why is that? And he said, if you tell anyone I ever said this, and here I am, if you tell anyone I ever said this, I'm going to say that you're a liar. I said, okay. And he said, you are too honest now about who you are. And I said, okay, I appreciate that. It was a punch to the gut, but appreciate you telling me. I said, so let me give you my perspective. So I just want the same things that everybody else has when they come into work. When I come into work on Monday, I want to be able to say, I went to this movie with my boyfriend, or I had a great time with my family and my husband. And that's not asking for anything special. That's just saying, this is who I am. And I told him, I said, I'm 30 years old at that time. This has been a while ago. 30 years old. I said, but I'm one day going to be 40. And if I don't make myself be honest and have integrity, then people are going to make assumptions anyway about who I am. If you're 40 years old and you never have a girl on your arm, you never talk about a wife, people aren't stupid. They're going to start thinking, well, Bo's probably gay. And I would rather get that out of the way first. I learned it's more important for me to let you know right now who I am from the jump, because I don't want to be hurt. And I'd rather you know authentically who I am. I could bring a woman to these events and pretend to be something I'm not to get ahead, but that's not integrity. That's lying. And that's not right for that woman either. So I told him, I said, sir, I appreciate your feedback, but I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to get promoted. And I worked my ass off. I don't know if I can say that, but I worked my ass off. And he retired. He had been in the business for a long time. He retired about a year later, and I did get promoted. Next place that I went to work, I started our LGBT business resource group. And they didn't know what the alphabet was. I said, where's our LGBT? And they said, what does that mean? And I said, well, let me tell you what it means. It means better productivity. It means tapping into other groups of people that are of like mind that can help us to grow this business. And when you have something in common with the person that you're doing business with, and they feel comfortable with you, then the sky's the limit in what we can bring in. I had a business plan and we exceeded that business plan and they said, go for it. So finally, I guess the last thing I would say about it, I was promoted to a regional manager. I was a senior leader for that organization. And when I left there, after I was 15 years one place, 14 years at the other. When I left there and I came to Fourth Capital, which is where I'm at now, I was in the interview process. Sat down, second interview, and my current boss, she's looking at my resume, and she says, I see here that you used to be on the board for the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. What do you think I did? I went gulp. Oh, here we go. Just, privately owned bank. I mean, I don't know how they're going to react to this. And she said, I said, yes, ma'am. She said, are you going to be able to leverage this with us to help? I said, oh, wow. Things have changed. And by bringing my authentic self to work, I'm able to leverage those partnerships in our community to help us to be more successful and to be a model of what can be a successful business person in a conservative industry. And I'm proud of where I work now, and I'm proud of being my authentic self. So I hope that story helps somebody.
Thank you. Thank you both. That's, one of the great things about being part of this panel for me over the years is I've learned so many different stories, oftentimes very powerful stories. I appreciate yours as well. Let's bring it over here, and Tara, if you wouldn't mind sharing, just to kind of remind you, bringing your whole self to work, what does it mean to you and what perspective do you bring to the top?
Absolutely. Thank you. When I think about bringing my whole self to work, it is not only beneficial to me personally, but it's part of my job responsibilities. As the senior manager of USDEI operations for Nissan, it is important for me to exhibit bringing my whole self to work so that others know that it is okay to be authentic and to be yourself every day. In my role, I support our ERGs, which are called business synergy teams. And one of our most amazing business synergy teams is our GSON group, which stands for the Gay Straight Alliance at Nissan. I lost the A for a second, Alliance at Nissan. And the amazing work that we're able to do through that group, it has broadened business for Nissan. Today, Nissan sponsors 11 Pride parades around the country, all because this business synergy team was created and they were allowed to pour into the business and offer up opportunities that the business was missing. And so we're ramping up for June, but what makes it work for me and for me to be my authentic self is being a person of color. For many years, I felt like and was taught as a child that I had to be extra. I had to do more. I had to work harder. I had to get there earlier. I had to stay there late. I had to have the better grades. I had to do everything above and beyond just to succeed. And so as I've become acclimated to the LGBTQ plus community in this role and becoming a true ally, I understand some of those struggles. I'm able to relate to them. So I feel like it's important to me as a woman and a woman of color, when I come to work every day, I have to be authentically me. And I have to let them know it's okay for you to be authentically you, whatever you looks like. We have discovered through years of research and just leveraging best practices that when a person can come to work and be happy in that job, being themselves, they are the most productive. And companies that embrace people being them authentic selves and allowing avenues for that to happen, it truly benefits the company. And so me being able to put that on display every day and what I do and what I support and what I believe which is that everybody deserves an opportunity. Everybody deserves the ability to display what they can bring to the organization. We all know there are systematic roadblocks in place that have evolved over the decades. And so now what we're seeing is that as young people come into the workforce, they're looking at things a little differently. They're breaking down those barriers, and people are learning that when those barriers are removed, that people really are collaborative, they are creative, and business moves beyond what anyone had been able to even imagine. And so when you open those doors and you allow people to do that and you display that to them and let them know it's okay, you don't have to put on a facade. You don't have to be something different or try to be like the person next to you or mimic their behaviors, that you can be your authentic self. You see that in the results of the bottom line. You see that in the employees. You see the engagement. You see the feedback that they give in how they enjoy being a part of your organization. And so I take it very personally. And again, it's part of my job role to make sure that regardless of what you look like, that you're able to do that. And I start that off every day by giving myself permission to be me.
Thank you again. We appreciate that perspective as well. And we've been fortunate that over the years, a number of people from Nissan have been part of this event and shared their perspectives in these regards. And so we appreciate you and your colleagues as well.
Thank you.
Along the way. And again, as you're taking this in and kind of getting the stories to kind of get us started, if you start thinking of questions out there in the audience, jot them down, because we're going to kind of get the ball rolling on this end up here, but eventually we're going to be inviting kind of your questions and input along the way as well too. But I'd like to then, let's pop it out to Victoria, let you jump in. Again, bringing your whole self to work, what does it mean to you and what perspective do you bring to the top?
Yeah, thank you. I have some barking dogs, so if you hear something in the background, that may be what that is. The joys of logging in on Zoom. But really, a lot of what Bo said resonated with me because I have been told similar things by people in that generation. So I'm of a different generation than what Bo was referring to. But I remember when coming into TVA as an intern, I was talking to my parents and they were like, don't come out at work, like don't share anything about your personal life, like that's a mistake that can derail your entire career. And even though I saw a lot of positive signs at TVA towards it being an inclusive workplace, like the existence of all of our ERGs and our very strong anti-discrimination language and statement, and a bunch of other things too, it scared me for about a good year and a half or 2 years from even ever broaching the topic of coming out. I feel like I'm in a little bit of a unique position. So I'm a bisexual woman who's in a long-term relationship with someone who is male identifying and presenting. So I didn't have to hide my relationship or my weekend plans or anything like that. But I did feel like I was being inauthentic by not being open and out and visible, especially for the bi+ community, because there can be a lot of discrimination on both ends of the spectrum, sadly, within the LGBTQ+ community and outside of it, of course. Eventually, it was because of a lot of really visible people within TVA who are out and proud and just amazing people that I was like, you know what? I want to be that too. I saw how amazing they are for, the gay community and the lesbian community. I wanted to be that for the bi+ community. So I knew there had to be more than just me. So eventually I came out, got involved with our Spectrum Employee Resource Group. It's been an amazing and wonderful experience. And by coming out at work and being my authentic self and not being afraid, I realized how much energy I was wasting really on worrying and just masking and hiding. And that's just so not productive, not only for me, but also for my employer and my team and my group. And so, talking about that business case of diversity, equity, inclusion just makes total sense, not only from a statistics perspective, which as a finance professional, I love, but also from an anecdotal evidence standpoint as well. So that's really been my experience. And I really hope that all this positive momentum that, the corporate America has made can continue to happen, because it's just going to make the workplace better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to kind of capture that variety of experiences in different places, different lives, and different generations as well, too. Brandon, let me give you the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, echo a lot of the sentiments that you've probably heard already. So, especially from these panelists. So, I don't know, it's being authentic at work for me, or at least in my life. I work in the architecture engineering industry. It's still pretty conservative and pretty predominantly white cis male. And that is in all avenues of our markets and that we work in. I will say Gresham Smith does a really awesome job at being more diverse and really focusing on bringing different types of thought, especially since we are building environments for people in the cities that they live in. I really think when I started at Gresham Smith, I was straight. I was masking. It does take a lot of energy that can actually be put into productivity in the work that we do, and not having to worry about exactly who you're bringing to a work function or party, and really having to, say who you're going home to. It really does take a lot of energy. But I think post-pandemic, a lot of more people are being more authentic at work. These little Zoom screens allowed you to see inside people's lives during the pandemic, and really just kind of exacerbated the issue that work is pretty normal 9 to 5. It can be pretty tough. It could be really strict, but allowing your authentic self into work, and really just a lot of companies are starting to feed into that, and just being you at work, whether it's lowering your dress code, from having to be a suit and tie, depending on what kind of work you do, or just really your physical appearance. It's changed a lot in the workforce. There's a lot more actual variety that you will see. So I think really companies that focus on trying to be inclusive, and really lean on the intersectionality of whether you're LGBTQ or a different race or ethnicity, or male or female, or transgender person in the workforce. I think we really lean into that and try to help people feel comfortable in who they are at work. So for me, just being able to be authentic, gay presenting male, like it's great. I don't have to hide anything from anybody. I don't have to watch what I say. So
Thank you. We appreciate you sharing your very personal experience as well, too, quite openly in this.
yeah.
And then Brian, if you would, glad to get it to you to kind of close out this question.
Yes, thank you so much. When I first got invited to speak for the conference for this particular session, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And honestly, I didn't know, because when I was in college or getting ready to graduate from college, I wasn't really thinking about my sexuality being a hindrance to me getting a job. I was really thinking about my intersection of me being a Black man and getting a job. I remember when I was in college, I had these long locks in my hair, and my dad was like, you need to cut your hair because you're not going to get a job if you don't cut your hair. So I was thinking about myself as a Black person. But it wasn't until around 2013, I got my first job working at the First Response Center, which is the first leading organization in Nashville, Black-led, to address HIV and AIDS in the early 80s. And I was a case manager working on a SAMHSA grant, Substance Abuse and Mental Health grant. And the young people that were coming to my office were homeless, they were unemployed, they expressed themselves however they want to express themselves, but they always talk about how they did not have employment. And so that was my first, honestly, my first idea of understanding that there actually is a struggle for our community, getting a job. I don't know why I didn't think about it before. Again, I was just thinking about myself as a Black person. But what I did was while I was working on my master's degree, I created at my office a program to address skill building for the LGBTQ community. And I met with different people who worked as hiring managers for companies to say, if these individuals come through my program, will you hire them? And so that was my first stab at trying to address that particular issue. But I then went on to start my own organization called Mashup. And before that, I worked at another organization working with the LGBT community. So me personally, all of my work has been centered around my being. And so I didn't have to think about that. But then I took a few years off to build my nonprofit organization. And then I said, you know what, I want to get back into the workforce. And so some of the things that I was thinking about going into the workforce were, number one, I'm going to always be myself, because being myself literally has afforded me every opportunity that I've had. But I did want to make sure that I was coming into a place at this time fully understanding who I am, that I was going to be respected. And so I was so glad that the person who worked in HR, who was the first person I met for hiring for the job that I have now, let me know that he was a part of the LGBT community. I don't even know how that conversation came up in the interview. And I was like, okay, wonderful. And he was like, yes, I'm the chair of the LGBTQ community employee research group. I was like, oh my God, y'all have one of those? Great. He was like, oh yeah, I'm going to send you an email, get you signed up even before I got hired. He was going to make sure that you were a part of that. So that gave me confidence in knowing that I was also going to be in a place that would accept me. But then I also, think about, going back to how my hair looked, at how my dad made me cut my hair, and being myself, knowing that I'm going to always be myself no matter where I go. I have this mantle right now that I want to dismantle any biases that people may have against, who I am, my gender identity, my sexual orientation, and how I, my ethnicity and my race. And so I purposely, sometimes I'll show up to work at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I braid my hair. I will color my hair. I know y'all probably can't see, but my hair has a little brown on it. When I first started working, it was fully blonde, and I wanted to see how they would react. Because again, you have to show up as your true self. And if I showed up as my true self and they didn't respect that, then I would not be working there. And so I'm glad that I can be an advocate of voice for those who feel like they can't show up for them true selves. I do understand that in our community that there are still stigmas that are maybe unspoken, even with companies that have DEI groups, even with companies that have LGBTQ ERGs. But I do think it's important that if a company does not respect you and you feel like you cannot be yourself, then that company is not the place for you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Appreciate each of your kind of opening perspectives and points of view to the session here. What I want to do next is I'm going to toss a few questions out here, and we'll a little bit more popcorn it around a little bit. So we'll toss it out and kind of let people kind of jump in where they may. That may mean for some questions, some of you answer, and other questions, others of you answer. And Victoria, if you're looking to jump in, give me a little bit of a signal with your hand or something, so we make sure not to overlook you, because with sort of the microphone lag, I want to make sure that we keep you in the loop as we go along. So let me just begin a little bit here with, and some of this you began to address to some degree in some of your stories, but LGBT plus diversity can potentially raise a wide variety of reactions in the workplace, and organizations, of course, can contain people at all ends of the spectrum. The opening question is, I'm going to put these together. Part of this you started to answer, but what have you encountered? And more importantly, especially for the people in the audience, what advice do you have for LGBT plus individuals to help deal with that? Anybody want to volunteer to jump in and get us started?
I'm not afraid.
All right.
Not anymore. No, I think it's all about relationships. I mean, and maybe I'm biased because that's what I do, but it's about building relationships with people of all sorts. And there is a lot of diverse opinion out there. And I think when you're authentic to who you are and you share a little bit about where you're coming from and your family and what that looks like and how it's maybe different than theirs, people will relate to you more one-on-one. So I think, sitting down with somebody, meeting them where they are and showing them who you are in an honest way that's respectful goes a whole long way towards bringing people closer to where you would hope that they would wind up. You can't force somebody to respect or love or appreciate what you are. I mean, that's not how it works. But if you are leading an honest life, you're working hard, you're a good representation for your company, you're doing the things that you're supposed to do to be successful, that brings a modicum of respect and hopefully opens some minds that maybe wouldn't have been opened otherwise.
Other thoughts?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I couldn't put it any better than what Bo said. One of the things that we have uncovered is exactly that, the relationship building and having those conversations. For our previous fiscal year, our focus was all around having conversations at Nissan between coworkers, within our teams. As a matter of fact, our North Star is better conversations lead to better actions. And we found that when people are vulnerable, particularly leaders in an organization, and they share those experiences and they let people know, hey, we're all human. We've all had multiple different experiences. We've encountered all types of things. Here's what I did. These are the lessons that I learned. This is what I did great. This is what I didn't do so great. I learned from that experience, but we found having those vulnerable conversations and really being transparent and letting people know that transparency is okay. No one is expected to be perfect. No one is expected to be cookie cutter. But we found that having those conversations and truly having a conversation where it's two-way. I'm not just talking and you're just listening, but you're also sharing with me, that we do learn about things about each other that we've never known. When we started having these shortly before the pandemic, there were people I had worked with for literally a decade. And I learned all types of new things about them that I didn't know that actually helped me in my day-to-day interactions with them. I know about the things that are important to them, the things that matter to them, the things that make them happy, the things that make them sad. And when I know that, then I can respond to them accordingly and them with me in the same manner. And so again, that transparency, creating that safe space where people can communicate with you, and then just sharing who you are with them. I'm sure just that exposure alone will teach people a lot. For the students in the audience, or if just the audience in general, you may not be a student, but there's so many resources available. And in this day and time and with technology, there's so much available to us at our fingertips. And one of the things I've done to educate myself is simply research, simple research. There are so many local resources that we aren't aware of. And when you mentioned the table earlier, I made a mental note because I hadn't heard of that and I want to learn about that. But tap into the resources within your communities as well. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. I promise you, some of the things that you're experiencing aren't brand new. Somebody else has walked that path. They've had that experience and they learn from it. So learn from their experience. And that would be my advice to the audience.
And let me expand this a little bit. And by the way, you all can override me at any point, take this wherever you like. But, of course, we live in a world in which we got people with a wide variety of views, and they come to the workplace with all of those wide variety of views, right? So how does an probably have experience with some organizations that have created a more effective, inclusive culture, and others that have perhaps been more challenged by that. What's the difference? What are some of the keys to success? What are the things that organizations can do to create that healthier culture?
I was about to say, I think it's really finding similarities versus differences amongst your employee base. Or even just your groups, your tribes, your squads, whatever you want to call them. I know at Gresham Smith, we have these things called community conversations where we just have a topic. Our first one was LGBTQ intersectionality. And we invited the whole firm, and we're about 1,100 people. And we had over 280 people hop on, which is great. It's 20% or a little bit more. But we were able to have a conversation about how LGBTQ literally intersects with most people's lives, whether it's their son, their daughter, their grandparent, that have experienced, any part of the LGBTQ life, as well as even just friends, best friends, that they're, just part of their group. So really just calling in those similarities, a lot more people connect. They feel more close to the next person or virtually to them. So I think just creating those similarities and those connections and that proximity is really gonna beat out any stereotypes or just non-inclusive kind of work habits.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with, everything you all have said. I think about a time when I was invited to speak for this company that had a DEI group, where they host monthly sessions where they invite different speakers from the community to talk to them about those uncomfortable conversations that their group may have in a safe space. And so when I go into those spaces and have those conversations with different groups at different companies, I let them know that there, number one, is no question that is wrong. There's no question that I'm going to judge, because if you all have taken that step to create space for people to want to learn, then I am all on board for that. I do understand there are a lot of companies that don't have that, but I want to celebrate the ones that do. I even think about a while back, I know Greg Kaysen, who worked at Nissan, and I remember him just, being so happy to talk about his involvement with the LGBT resource group, at Nissan, and being able to share with me some of the things that they're doing to advance that, and taking that knowledge that I learned from people who are doing that active work in organizations and sharing that in other spaces that I am a part of. And so I think just continuing to learn, grow, and talk to people who at their jobs have these spaces, then taking that and teaching other companies how they can copy that.
Victoria, I want to make sure we're not overlooking you. So I want to give you at least, you can either say nothing now, or you can jump in with comments you have at this point.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit. So I definitely agree with the whole idea of, coming in with vulnerability and having difficult conversations. This is definitely something that TVA has been focusing on. Of course, being electric utility, we are all about safety, but recently I feel like we've expanded that definition of safety to also include psychological safety. And that's really, really important when you're having these difficult conversations, because, maybe your leadership is comfortable talking about these kinds of topics, but your individual contributors are not. So that's really something that we've been working on a ton at TVA, and we have a series called Courageous Conversations, which covers a whole bunch of different DEI topics with leaders inside of TVA and outside of TVA. We have ERG events, whether those are panel discussions or other types of events. And we just have a whole bunch of things that really spur that. But I also think of a couple of other things too. And maybe this is helpful for the college students in the audience. Because I was in their shoes not so long ago, and I'm also currently a grad student. So these are things that I look for too. So, when looking at companies that maybe you want to work for, or just like little green flags of things that you can see. Like the existence of ERGs, of course, is super important and amazing, and get involved in those if you can. I also like to see, and I think TVA is doing a good job at this, is like, of course, you can talk the talk all you want, but are you actually like walking the walk? Like, what actions are you doing to actually match what you're saying publicly, whether it's on your social media or internally to your employees. I also think metrics and measuring, super, super important. Like TVA, we rolled out a self-identification feature in our HR system so we can finally measure LGBTQ plus employee representation, as well as some other key factors like disability identification, veteran status, a couple of other things too, which is amazing and long overdue. So we're measuring that. We have long-term goals that we're also trying to work towards in some underrepresented populations. So these are all things that I've seen at TVA that I think should be everywhere and I think are amazing and really point to that being an inclusive culture.
I got two of the questions I want to kind of ask now. One of them on script, one of them off script. So I'll kind of warning the panel. And then after that, I'd like to kind of invite a little bit more kind of questions from the audience as well too. But one of the ones off script, you talked about sometimes having those conversations, maybe even uncomfortable conversations along the way. And you know, to what extent have you encountered people who perhaps were almost struggling with having the conversation because they didn't want to say the wrong thing, or and what advice do you have for those kinds of situations, including perhaps people who may be sitting there right now wanting to do what you're saying, but in some ways anxious or uncomfortable with how to do it, and you know, and have this go well.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in really, and hopefully some may agree, some may not agree, but I truly give grace to people who want to learn and give them grace to make mistakes. Even as a member of the LGBTQ community, I still make mistakes. I tell everybody all the time that, you know, in the Black LGBTQ community, we didn't do the pronoun thing. That really is still a new concept that even to this day, I'm not going to say I struggle with, but I have to actively, you know, make sure that I am practicing asking for pronouns. And so I say that because grace is so important for people who want to learn. And you have to, when you have those difficult conversations as an LGBTQ person, for someone who is not a part of our community, who wants to learn, you have to let them know before we start the conversation, if you make a mistake, that's okay. I will correct you. You can make the mistake 2 or 3 times, maybe after the 3rd time, okay, you know, I don't know, maybe you don't really want to learn, but creating grace is very important before you even start to have that difficult conversation.
So sincere stumbling is okay.
Yes, right.
I do plenty of that. Any other comments from anybody on that?
I've got a little short story around that. So many years ago, I was leaving a meeting and one of my peers came up to me and we were chit-chatting, and he was like, "So, Bo, you married?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you have any kids?" And I said, "No." "Well, if you're married, why don't you have any kids?" And I said, "It just didn't happen for us." And he's trying to meet him where he was. And he said, "You gotta have kids." And I said, "I don't have kids." And he goes, "Well, but you're married." And I said, "Yeah, my wife's name is Steve." And he goes, huh. We walk out to the parking lot. The whole way, he's like, trying to process it. Finally, he looks at me and he goes, "That's no reason for you not to have kids." And I was like, "You're all right, man. You got to meet them where they are. You got to give them grace. You got to give people time to process." So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I would say I just had a specific instance a couple weeks ago. We invited a transgender man. His name is Frankie Love. He's in Atlanta, and he provides gender inclusive haircuts. It's part of his business. And we invited him into the firm to talk to anybody that was curious about transgender people in general. And we have a DEI consultant. His name is Torrin Ellis. He works with us a lot at Gresham Smith, and he asked this question about trans and the trans community in athletics and what's been happening in the recent days. And the way he asked that question, he had so much grace and he fumbled through it, but he just truly wanted to learn. You kind of knew where his heart was when he asked the question. And I think that's key is really just putting it all out there, not afraid to ask it. And it's kind of crazy because we had multiple employees after that be like, I wanted to ask that same exact question and I didn't know how to. So out of that, we've started this like debunking segment as part of our LGBTQ like monthly meeting for our employee resource network. And it's just how to have really tough conversations and kind of creating that space for calling people in and letting them literally ask the question however they need to in order to be able to answer that and kind of go out and be free. Answer this correctly, please.
You know, in many ways, even asking or engaging awkwardly, stumbling, and even mistake prone is a better alternative with sincerity than avoiding it altogether because we don't make any progress otherwise. And I think, you know, it being okay to not be perfect, being okay to even having some struggle with that along the way is I think important for everyone to be aware of. One of the things that you talked about both with that and previously there is about, you know, organizations and the cultures and kind of how it can vary. But for the folks in the room, a lot of them may be looking for future employers, hopefully successfully so. But as they're considering potential employers, how can they identify in a potential employer what the LGBT plus culture is? And I know there've been some comments from Victoria and from some of you others as well too that are touch on that, but I want to maybe ask that more directly.
So as I shared previously, first of all, you want to be true to who you are. And I think mentioning that you have a same-sex spouse or putting on your resume, your community involvement, that is a really great way to kind of see what the reaction is. I shared before, and I want to recognize they showed up. My boss is here, and her question was, how can we leverage this to be successful? When I heard that, I knew I was in a place where I would be welcomed and the contributions I could bring to the table would be appreciated. And I think just being honest and open and maybe asking a few questions about, you know, what is the culture like here? What do you appreciate about the culture? Do you feel like this is a great space for everyone to be at? I think it's okay to ask those questions, and you can tell. You can tell if you're listening to what the responses are and where they go with that. Be inquisitive and be honest.
I'd like to add to that. This kind of goes back to the first question about being your authentic self. As you start your job search, know what you need from an employer. We've talked about the ERGs. Think about the health benefits. You want to vet the health benefit packages. You want to make sure that you ask those questions about the culture. What will the company give to you besides a paycheck? Because you will spend roughly a third of your week in this space. And for a lot of us, and I say a lot of us, we probably do more than a third of our week. And so you spending that much time with a group of people in an environment at a company, you want to be happy there. And you want to make sure that you enjoy that and that you have an experience that will grow your career to what you want to be. And so I agree with Bo, asking those key questions about those things that are most important to you will help you vet and decide if a company is for you, because they are different. There are indexes out there. HRC has an index that measures companies on how they provide benefits and resources to members of the LGBTQ plus community. So again, do your homework, know what the right questions are to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Just this year, for the first time, I was asked by our talent management team to participate in a panel interview because the candidate was a transgender candidate and she had questions. And she wanted to know about our employee resource group. She wanted to know, was it just something that Nissan created? And we had to talk about, no, this was an employee generated group. It is ran and governed by the employees that participate in that group. And so it made me feel good to know that she was bold enough to ask those questions, because in my almost 30-year career in the automotive industry, which is, highly white male led industry, for the first time, I felt like, wow, she asked the questions that I'm sure people want to know, but we've been told you don't ask about salary and you don't ask about this and you don't. But again, if you're pouring that much time and energy and that much of yourself into an organization, know what that organization is going to give back to you.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Before my most recent job, as I mentioned earlier, the majority of my jobs were LGBTQ focused. And so I already knew my resume would reflect that. But I did have a moment, and I actually was so ashamed of myself that as I was looking at my resume preparing for the job, I was like, "Ooh, I wonder, should I change around a word, or should I describe this role differently to appease?" And I said, "You know what? No, I'm not going to do that." And so if they call me, they're calling me, number one, knowing that my expertise, my lived experience, whether they knew it for me personally or not, was involved in the LGBTQ community, even though that job was not necessarily related to the LGBTQ community. But what I wrote down a few notes here that even before applying for the job, I look at the job description. And in the job description, there are some jobs who will put on their job post, LGBTQ friendly. And so I look out for things like that. And if it's not on there, then when I go into the interview, I know to ask about those things. I'm glad you mentioned about the benefits, because that is important, especially gender inclusive benefits. Let's see. I even look at the website and see when I email the individual, when they respond back, and look at their email tag, if they have the pronouns by their name in their email tag, or on their website. If you go on our website, at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in the Office of Health Equity, everybody who works there has a pronoun by their name under their bios. And so that is affirming to me. I think we already talked about individuals who work at companies, but I look at conferences like this, I'll look and see who the corporate sponsors are. Even with the LGBT chamber, there are many businesses in Nashville where it's not called the chamber anymore, I'm sorry, but I know that's a chamber.
I know.
There are many companies who are associated with the chamber. Look up those companies and see who supports. We have Pride coming up. At Pride, you have all these companies who are out there. Go out to Pride and make sure you stop by those tables and have those conversations with those companies who are out at Pride. Now, just because they're at Pride doesn't mean that that is a company that you want to work for, because some people may just be showing up to check mark, say, "Oh, hey, see, we came to Pride. Oh, yeah." But have conversations with them at Pride, as well as have fun as well. And then the last thing I see in the interview, I would find out about how they honor reporting. So if I am discriminated against, what does y'all reporting mechanism look like? And not just me reporting, what does the follow-up to the reporting look like? How do you all recommend individuals who have discriminated against those who are part of the LGBTQ community? Those are just a few things that I mentioned. I have more things, but I know we have not a lot of time in other panels, so I want to give the floor to my colleagues to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I want to actually take a pause. I've got a whole lines question. I could do this all day long. But what I really want to do is also give really kind of the room an opportunity to jump in with any questions that you may have for the panelists, if you will, here. So please, I'm going to toss it out here for that moment of uncomfortable silence where we all stare at each other. But please, if you've got a question, it helps kind of engage the room. And to be honest, there's always somebody else in the room who shares the same question. You having the courage to step up and ask it is greatly appreciated. So questions from the gallery about any of this or even beyond this? Yes.
Hi, thank you for all your comments so far. Given the backlash against companies like Disney, do you feel like the appetite of companies with their diversity initiatives is going to be pulling back, or do you feel like that's where we should be looking towards in terms of stopping some of the more heinous legislation?
I will say the social media does perpetuate a lot of what it's all about finding and digging into information. I'm also involved with Out and Equal, which is a really great nonprofit for workplace awareness for LGBTQ employees. They're hosting at Disney this year in September, and it's the biggest LGBTQ conference for any Fortune 500 company. And it's not performative. It's actually kind of amazing being among 3,000 colleagues that do the same thing that we're doing. We actually got our whole business plan from that from that conference last year, which was in Vegas. But they're hosting it at Disney on purpose, and Disney has allowed them to be there on purpose. So while yes, there are backlashes, I'm not trying to protect Disney or anything. I don't, not affiliated, but I think a lot of companies that do kind of get backlash like that, they do try to, really step forward 2 more steps because they have recognized that they've done something wrong. But I mean, I think, everybody makes mistakes. These companies are made of multiple people and people make mistakes too. Especially some of the wrong people can get in there too.
I'll add to that. What I've learned, particularly in this role in the last 18 months, is that ironically, a lot of large corporations are in the same predicament. When I came into the role, I'm like, oh, we've got a ton of work to do. We've got to work. We got to move the needle, and we do. But as I start to look at benchmarks, the effort in diversity, equity, and inclusion is relatively new here in the United States. And the United States is the most complex DEI model of any country in the world. And so we're learning. And I say that because the things that we identify as best practices and really trying to mark what we want to be when we grow up takes a lot of effort. And the bigger your organization is, the slower the growth and the change is. I was expecting, double-digit changes in metrics, and I was quickly told if we can get a 0.5% change, we're doing phenomenal, just because of the amount of work that it takes to move the needle. And quite honestly and frankly, the reason it takes so much is because the same ingrained experiences that I have as a human being, lots of other leaders, team members, employees also have that. So you have just different, people are different, and the way that they receive the need to change is different. Some people will transition quickly, very receptive, want to have an inclusive environment. Other people have to learn it. They have to truly shift their behavior, and it's a growing process for them. And so with all of these different dynamics of dealing with different individuals, I think you put it perfectly. You have all these individual personalities making this one organization, but we're trying to move the organization as a single unit. And awareness, training, having those vulnerable conversations, those open conversations, and really pushing people to think differently and to even consider and be respectful of other people's thoughts, processes, experiences. All of that takes time. And the US as a country, we're moving in that direction. Do I think we'll go back? I don't think so. I think this new generation of young people won't let us, quite frankly. I think the idea of going back to the way we've done things, whether it's in politics, whether it's in within corporations, it'll never go back. I just find that very hard to believe. What's happening here in Tennessee and the way that politics is coming to the surface, people aren't being quiet and just sucking it up anymore. They're speaking their truth. And so because the majority is doing that now, I don't think we can go back to being silent. I don't think people will accept that.
Yeah, and with all of the political and societal swings, you had made some of these comments and you also mentioned HRC and their corporate equality index earlier. Just a little follow-up to that on the information, because I think in some ways, the work world seems to be sometimes ahead of the rest of that. And maybe it's good to have a little reminder of at least what are the signs of encouragement in these regards. So that corporate equality index put up by the HRC, in their couple of notes here on this here, in 2002, 13 companies received the top score of 100% on their corporate equality index. That's 2002. In 2015, that was 366. And in 2022, it's 842. So the trend is certainly building and the momentum is accelerating in some of these regards. Also, with regard to businesses offering transgender inclusive benefits, which I think you had raised earlier as well too, 1,160 in the 2022 report. And that's just of the corporations that they were able to evaluate. And 662 major businesses also had adopted gender transition guidelines to establish best practices in transgender inclusion for managers and teams. So just to kind of reinforce some of the points made up here with where the trend has been in these regards. So yes, there's very much still a struggle going on all around us, but the indicators of progress through that struggle are there as well, and we'll just have to kind of keep working amidst all of that. Additional questions? Well, you really got us started. Thank you. Other questions? Let me go ahead here.
Some positions require like licenses or certifications, and I think about it specifically in like the education sector where we see laws in Florida and even some laws in Tennessee that might make it difficult for people employed in those fields to be out and bring their whole selves to work due to the risk of them losing their license, and that threatens their future employment. So I'm wondering what maybe advice or thoughts you have based on those types of issues.
You've challenged our panel.
I think you just have to, again, be honest and open and talk through those things when they come up. It's a scary time, and we have to continue to be ourselves, be authentic, and fight the good fight. That's the only thing I can tell you. I echo what you said. We're not going back. We're not going back. This generation is going to save us.
I have one word: vote.
Yeah.
Like things like that, like in Florida and Texas, and you have these educators losing their license. Get the vote. Honestly, those laws are being put into place by policymakers that are totally against progress in these areas. So, vote.
Victoria, I want to make sure again that we haven't bypassed any thoughts you've got on this or any other ones. So if not, let me know. But if there is anything you'd like to jump in with here, please do.
Yeah, no specific feedback on this question. I mean, representing TVA, we're a federal government agency. We can't get too political with these types of questions and discussions. But yeah, it's sad what's happening across the country, and I agree. We can't go back, and I think that people in generations previous to mine have done too much work that we just can't let that go to waste.
Great. Thank you. Other members of the audience, other questions?
Can I just, I was just in here thinking, and this may not be the best answer to this question, because I understand that there are many different, career choices for individuals to choose. But a lot of times we think about, working for somebody. And I always think about what I did was I started my own organization so I wouldn't have to answer to anybody. And so if there is a career that you can do where you can start your own thing, I would encourage you to do that, while also advocating for, laws in different states to change. I remember one time I was just sitting thinking, I was like, I'm from Nashville, so right now I'm embarrassed to be in Tennessee, and from Tennessee. However, I did have moments where I thought about moving. And so I looked up, I had Googled at one point and I wrote it down. It's called the Movement Advancement Project. And it literally breaks down by state, which state based on their laws discriminates against gender, identity, and discriminates against sexual orientation. And of course, Tennessee is, yeah, we know where Tennessee is. But I don't even, maybe my advice is find a state that, supports who you are and don't have laws that discriminate against you. If that's probably bad advice because I'm somebody like me. I'm from here. I'm gonna stay here. This is where my family is, and so I'm gonna continue to advocate for us to change that here. But could start your own business, or you could move somewhere where they support you.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember too that this has happened before. This is not new. Back in the 70s, there were laws in California that were being passed that you could not be a teacher and be openly gay. And it's everything is cyclical. Pendulum swings one way and then it swings the other. And we've got to stay strong and we've got to stay focused. And we have to keep sharing our stories, keep showing who we are so that the fear is lessened and understanding grows. This is not the first time. It won't be the last time, but we just got to keep fighting.
Great. One of the things we've talked about along the way is sometimes what are the positions these organizations take? Sometimes it's in their advertisements or it's on their website. Sometimes it's in their policies and procedures even. And at the same time, while policies and procedures are a critical and certainly well-intentioned start, they don't automatically ensure widespread practice and having an actual substantial impact on culture. Sometimes they do, and sometimes that translation doesn't fully happen. So what are the keys to assuring that diversity policies actually manifest into practice and culture and ultimately genuine inclusion?
So I do want to speak to that because I worked for two large banks over 30 years. And if you go to the HRC scorecard, they were pretty high ranked. And I still experienced what I experienced. And so I think a scorecard is a great indicator of where the policies are that can back you up. At the end of the day, are you with an employer that shows up? Are you with an employer that gets you? Are you with an employer that stands with you and wants to help you to leverage your best skills in your relationships? So you can't count on that HRC scorecard to protect you at the end of the day. You have to do your homework and you have to be with people that will actually go out and do those things with you. And that's why I'm proud of where I am, because they show up.
And I know Victoria mentioned this earlier, but self-identification programs at firms, those are really utilized for good. Obviously, the access to on any of that information should just be really one person or a couple people in the firm. Usually it's in an HR seat, but self-identification really just lets you know exactly who your employee base is. It can shape policies. It could really take away policies that are bad, or it can, enact policies that are good, benefits as well. Companies really need to get on board with self-identification. It's really going to help you just really understand like who your employee base is and how to best serve them. But yeah.
What are some best practices you're seeing from employers these days? Any particular trends come out to you and why? Victoria, let me toss it to you again, just as to get us started, if you have any.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I mentioned before are probably best practices. Your self-identification, like basically all HR systems have some way to do that. There's little excuse anymore for any large company not to have a self-identification mechanism in place. Having a guidebook for transitioning, what to do when employee decides to transition, how to handle that both on like the HR side and also like the IT side. I think that's really important too. Actually at TVA, we realized that people were having trouble changing their names, not only, transgender individuals, but also people that got married or got divorced. So it was a couple of our ERGs worked together with our IT group and got that together. So things like that are great too. And then something else I also want to add, kind of alluding to the previous question about that accountability. What I've seen at TVA, and I think it's been working well so far, and of course there's progress to be made, is like our leadership's very bought into this, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they set the tone for their organizations. But it's really the bottom up. That's where you get like your actual culture. And what I've seen is, there's probably maybe 10% of people that are super engaged, like super awesome, like are on ERG core teams. There's like 10% that are never going to be convinced. And then there's 80% that are somewhere in the middle. And so it's like, how do you get that 80% more engaged? That's the real question, and that's the challenge. And I think every organization goes through something similar as well, where it's like, how do we move more of our overall employee group to be that super engaged, super passionate group of people that see what DEI can do for them and how it, just makes the workplace better for everyone overall.
Go ahead and toss it back out to the audience.
This isn't so much a question, but a comment on the last question related to policies and procedures. As the person who's responsible for those things here at this university, I would say if you find yourself in a place where the policies don't support you, always know that you can go to government agencies, even if you're not, at a place that's a federal contractor. There's places like the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. There are entities out there that you can go to for support, even if you find yourself at a place where the policies themselves are not helpful.
Other questions? Yes, there's another question over here. Get your exercise.
Sorry about that. Hi. Sorry, I have another question. So mentorship is a really important thing. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some ways that you guys do it both formally and informally, but also if you have a mentor that you looked up to and maybe some advice they may have given you?
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that we are just newly launching this year with Mashup is the Bayard Rustin Leadership Institute. And we launched the program, but we're still working to put it together. But with the Bayard Rustin Leadership Institute, and for those who are not familiar with Bayard Rustin, he was one of the key people behind the March on Washington. He was very pivotal, in ensuring that Martin Luther King looked great at the forefront while he did all the work in the background and didn't really get the recognition that he deserved. And so part of it is that we're elevating the voices of those who are leaders in their community, who are part of the LGBT community, recognizing what they're doing, but also what we're doing with the Bayard Rustin Leadership Institute through Mashup are finding people who work in various careers and matching them with college students or other young people who want to do the same thing that they're doing and providing that one-on-one mentorship with them. And so that's what we're doing. I'm not sure what others are doing, but we definitely thought that it was important for us to incorporate into the work that we do.
Mentors or mentorship, any other aspects of the question?
Yeah, I know Gresham Smith, we have a mentorship program that we're launching, and we're even through our innovation Studio X is what we call it. We even thought about bringing in AI into the space. Everybody's been hearing ChatGPT and a lot lately, but bringing that into being able to match people truly where they are and having a mentor from someone that's senior level or mid-level into a entry level or a college student. So I know there's a lot of innovation that's going into programs like mentorship. We're not there yet, but we will be eventually. But it's also through nonprofits and organizations that you're just connected with in your communities. A lot of them do have a mentorship aspect to it. Even at career fairs, I feel like a lot of the representatives that go to career fairs or recruiters or people that are actually in the job that you're looking for or similar or in proximity to it, just connecting with those folks too and being able to make that connection.
And I can add a little bit to that from a couple of perspectives. At Nissan, we have several mentorship programs. We have them within our ERGs, where the affinity groups themselves, and which makes it very easy when you're a part of that affinity group to find someone with same interests, like interests, those types of things. Our HR team also manages a full mentorship program for the organization as well. And then in our functional areas, there are quite a few functions that have mentorship programs within their specific function to help with career planning and those types of things. Having been a mentor and still currently a mentor, as well as a mentee, mentorships are very, very important. It's good to have someone that you can bounce ideas off of. What I found as a mentor is I actually learn from my mentee. I offer up a lot back to her, but I learn things from her because she works in a different functional area than I do. But the one thing that people don't talk about a lot is sponsorship. And sponsorship is a little bit different than mentorship. So I encourage you as students to understand the difference. When you have someone who is your sponsor, that is typically an executive level person who can really drive change in your career. They have a seat at the table. They're able to speak up for you on your behalf. So it's okay to have mentors, and I encourage you to have more than just one. But also think about who would be a great executive sponsor for you when you do embark on that career. And if you're not an entrepreneur, because that's going to be a person that has insight and wisdom into company operations. They can help guide you and direct you on things that are sometimes not written in the policies. And so I encourage you to also look for a sponsor in addition to mentors as well.
So as we head into the last 10 minutes or so of our session, and I'm looking, we got 5 different folks. I'd like to give each of you at least maybe a couple of minutes. If you have any sort of closing thoughts, insights, comments, or even issues we haven't had a chance to get to that you really wanted to make sure you could kind of touch in on with the audience. And I think in this case, let's start us off with Brandon.
Great. So
I
I
didn't
mean,
give you any warning.
it's fine, no worries. So I mean, just in kind of bringing it all together and bringing your true authentic self to work. We are who we are. Your employers will know who you are if you let them in. When I started at Gresham Smith, like I said, I wasn't out. I actually had an HR director at the time who, I think in my first couple of days sent an email out to our whole HR team talking about, she'll probably hate me if I say this out loud, but why there's more school shootings because they took God out of school. And I was like, I'm in the wrong place. Get me out. But when I started to, come out at work, my boyfriend at the time, who was my roommate, moved to Boston, and I wanted to follow him, who's now my husband. I wanted to see how it worked out. It was my first relationship out in my social setting, but not in my work setting. So I wanted to see how it went. So can you imagine going to an HR director that sends those kind of emails out, wondering if you're going to be let go, because back then we still were not federally protected in 2019 for being let go for, your sexual orientation. She actually met me with a lot of grace and completely surprised me, 180. Not the same person that when she sent that email out my first couple days at Gresham. Which again, people make mistakes, but they overcome them. So she's really learned a lot, but that's because I've opened up about myself and my perspective. And she actually helped me get our LGBTQ employee resource network off the ground, and really just establish our advisory committee for our DEIB boards. She's really just been a really great supporter. So as scary as it may seem, being your authentic self and just really being out there and giving your perspective is really going to make a whole difference. And it happens every day.
Thank you. See, I'm keeping them on their toes. They don't know who I'm calling. Brian.
You know, I think about the artist who I love so much. Her name is Fantasia. And she has a song that says, "If you don't want me, then don't talk to me." And I literally carry that in every aspect of my life, not just in relationships, because this advice is good for relationships as well. But again, I said this at the beginning. Every opportunity that I have been afforded has been because I have literally shown up as my true self. I won't change for anybody. I'm gonna dress how I want to dress. I'm gonna wear my hair how I want to wear my hair. Yes, when I'm walking and walking across Vanderbilt University Medical School, with my braids in my hair, with my hair all colored any kind of way I want to, with my LGBTQ colors on. And yeah, they may look at me any kind of way, but guess what? I'm there. And I'm there because I know my worth. I know who I am. I know I'm smart enough to be in that place. And again, if you don't want me, then don't talk to me.
Thank you. Victoria.
Yeah, this has been a really great event for me. So this falls in some kind of weird timing. Actually, I'm leaving TVA. My last day at TVA is Monday, and I'm starting a new job at a new company. And so I'm reminding myself of a lot of what we're talking about today. Of just like, I feel like I found my family at TVA. And I feel like I found a lot of people that I care about, and going into a new environment can be scary. But I do want to retain that authentic sense of self that I've built here for the past 5 years. So I'm going to keep in my nose ring. I'm going to have my slightly pink hair. I'm going to, wear my rainbow earrings like I am today. All of that's going to stay. I'm reminding myself of that. But this has been a good way to like look back on that experience. And one thing I'll say to the, all the college students in the audience is, when I was in college, I didn't think I would find a workplace that would be so accepting and just so embracing of me and who I am. Like I didn't grow up with a family that was accepting at all. And that's been really hard. Like my chosen families had to become my family. And a lot of that chosen family I found at my work. And I hope that you all have a similar experience too, if you do have a similar kind of upbringing to what I have. I hope you really find those people at work. It's a super powerful thing. It's also made it really difficult to decide to leave TVA. But yeah, this has just been a wonderful event. It's been a really good way to wrap up my experience here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
It's been a pleasure having you part of it as well too, and good luck with what's next for you. Tara.
I feel like I've poured out just about everything that I had, but it's experiences like this and hearing different perspectives from even the panelists here, pondering the questions that you pose that help me be a better person personally and professionally. So I'm excited for you all. I'm excited for the opportunities that will be in your future. If I can ever be of a resource, I'm on LinkedIn, please look me up, but I encourage you to tap into all types of resources. There's so much information available to you. There are some hard questions out there. There are some difficult situations, but I'm convinced that there are answers, and there are good answers that benefit everybody that is involved. Thank you again for the opportunity today. And glad Nissan is a sponsor of events like this, and know that there are other events that you guys can tap into as resources as well.
Thank you. And Bo?
I know I shared a lot earlier, so I'm gonna just leave you with one quick story that my dad, who's passed away, but many, many, many years ago, I had a conversation with him and I asked him, Dad, I know you love me. If you could change me and make me straight, would you do it? And that man said, son, people are like tapestries. If you pull one string out because you don't like it, the whole thing can unravel. He said, you're a good person and I love you exactly the way that you are, and I wouldn't change one damn thing about you. And I carry that with me every single day to be the most authentic person that I can. I don't want any other kids sitting there suicidal, not knowing what their future is gonna, if they have a future, if they've got anybody. I want to be that representation. So it's, for me, it's even bigger than work. It's about being a good role model for the people that you care about in society. Last thing I'll say is my boss at a previous job used to come in and always be like, you need to have kids. You need to have kids. And I was like, oh, I'm too old for that. I'm too old for that. And he said, you'd be the best father if you do that. You know, all these, you know, we talk about mentorships, the gay people that I meet, the LGBT people in my life, those are my children. And I want all of them to have the best possible life. So be yourself, leverage it as a strength. It will help you in your career if you do it. If nothing else, you'll live authentically with integrity. And that's really important.
Wow, it really is a privilege to be able to share this experience with you all, your insights, your inspiration. I'm really just privileged to be part of it all. I want to thank each and every one of you for your contributions today and for sharing what at times can be very personal experiences in a very wide open venue today. And so thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
With that, I will go ahead and turn it back to you folks.
Thanks very much. Thank you all panelists again for being our panelists today. On behalf of the conference planners, supporters, MTSU Lambda Association, the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, and the Conference Advisory Board, thank you for your support of our efforts to present this worthwhile event. We want to especially thank you for your commitment to pulling together, and we ask that you accept this small token of our appreciation. Here, the small token.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is beautiful.
Before we let him go, I have a programming note, but I want to do one more thing. One of the hardest jobs at this conference is day hosting. And I believe that Faith has done an extraordinary job today. So let's give her a big round of applause. And on behalf of the conference, the advisory board, College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, thank you for your hard work today. Accept this small token of our appreciation. Thank you.